This is the Late Round Podcast with your host, JJ Zacharisa.
What's up, everyone? It's JJ Zacharisa, the editor-in-chief at FanDuel and at numberfire.com, and this is episode 565 of the Late Round Podcast, so many shows that are part of the FanDuel Podcast Network. Thanks for tuning in. FanDuel is giving you the opportunity to bet on Week 7 of the NFL season. All you have to do is go to sportsbook.fanduel.com or download the FanDuel Sportsbook app, place a 3 or more leg same-game parlay wager with cash on any Week 7 NFL game, and if your bet loses, you'll get a refund and site credit. Max refund is $10. Bet on Week 7 of the NFL season with FanDuel by heading over to the FanDuel Sportsbook today and placing a risk-free NFL same-game parlay. Must be 21 years or older and present in Arizona, Colorado, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, or West Virginia. Refund issued as non-withdrawable site credit that expires in 7 days. Max refund $10. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Same game parlay available for multiple sports in all states on mobile/web. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Visit fanduel.com/RG in Colorado, Iowa, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Illinois, Virginia. 1-800-9-WITH in Indiana. 1-800-270-7117 for confidential help in Michigan. Tennessee Redline 1-800-889-9789. Visit 1-800-GAMBLER.net in West Virginia or call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT STEP to 53342 in Arizona. Robert Woods found the end zone on Sunday, but don't let that fool you. After a monster Week 5 where he saw 40% of LA's targets and finishes the wide receiver 8 in PPR formats, Woods was back to seeing a below-average target share in Week 6. His 16.7% share was the fourth time that he'd been below 17% this season. He now has a 22% target share this year, but that's largely due to a couple of spiked weeks in volume. The truth is, he's not been the reliable fantasy asset that he's been over the last handful of years. He's not someone who's going to disappear, but I think we're bound to continue to see these fluctuations. I'd lean sell more than buy right now because he's coming off that game where he scored. But it's not a strong lean considering he did run the most routes for the Rams in Week 6. He's very clearly finally separated himself from Van Jefferson when that wasn't the case earlier this season. So I guess now that I'm thinking about it a little bit more, maybe he's more of a hold. Mike Gesicki is killing it right now, and no one seems to be talking about it. He's finished as a top 7 tight end in 3 of his last 4 games, and during this stretch, he's seen a target share per game average of almost 21%. Maybe this is the result of some of the wide receiver injuries that Miami's been dealing with. In fact, I think we can say that those injuries have something to do with it. But the Miami pass catchers can't stay healthy. And as long as they're banged up, Gesicki, who's more wide receiver than tight end anyway, he needs to be in your lineup. We know that pass rate is clearly dictated by game script. When teams are trailing, they throw the ball more. They're trying to catch up. When teams are leading, they tend to grind down clock and run the ball more. With that being said, it's still pretty surprising to me that the top team in overall pass rate this season, not pass attempts, but pass rate, is Mike Gesicki's team, the Miami Dolphins. They have a pass to rush attempt ratio of 2.06. That's the highest in the league. Since they've been playing so poorly and since Tua hasn't been healthy, I think we should naturally expect that number to lower a bit. But it's a good example of how even if a team wants to operate a particular way on offense, they can't always just do that. Derrick Henry is pacing towards history. I talked about that last week, and it continued in Week 6. One thing to watch out for, though, is the Titans' pass-to-rush touchdown ratio. I've brought this up on the podcast this season. But only Chicago has a lower pass-to-rush touchdown ratio this season than the Titans. Tennessee's tied with Cleveland now with a 0.5 ratio, meaning they've run for twice as many touchdowns as they've thrown for. And as I've noted in the past, this is well below the norm over the last decade for any team. And even if you look specifically at the Titans, this is still abnormal. It doesn't mean that Derrick Henry is going to be bad all of a sudden. It just means that we'll eventually see some sort of shift where some of his scores turn into passing scores. That's going to help Ryan Tannehill and the pass catchers on that team. Trend 5 is that Najee Harris has seen almost 88% of Pittsburgh's running back rushes with a near 20% target share. The exact numbers are 87.9% and 19.7%. If we use those numbers as filters, only 2 running backs over the last 10 seasons have hit those marks across the entire season. Christian McCaffrey in 2019 and Matt Forte in 2014. Now, Harris has the benefit that he's played every game so far this year. I'm sure we'll eventually get to a point where he's not 100% healthy, because that's what happens at the running back position. So there's some bias in a filter like this. But the fact that he's pacing towards this type of season shows you how historically good his usage has been in general, let alone as a rookie. Among the 31 quarterbacks with 100 or more pass attempts this season, and you can just include Justin Fields to make this 32 if you want because he has 99 pass attempts, but among this group of starters, Matt Ryan is last in the league in 15 plus air yard rate. Fewer than 10% of his attempts have traveled 15 or more air yards. I think we should expect that number to get better as the season goes on, especially considering his career average per season is over 17%. And when this all happens, it's going to help someone like Calvin Ridley, who needs to create more splash plays to get back to the elite status that we know that he can be in fantasy football. Speaking of 15 plus air yard throws, there are two defenses that seem like they're easily the best at defending those types of throws. Or two defenses who are likely to prevent these types of plays that you may want to avoid in fantasy football. One of them is Buffalo. The Bills rank 32nd in the league in deep ball rate allowed. But on top of that, they're fourth best in the league in completion percentage on those throws allowed. The Chargers are even better. LA is 30th in the league in deep ball rate allowed, and they've allowed just 20% of deep ball passes against them to be completed. That's the best in the league. The average team this year has allowed over 43% of those throws to be completed. So avoid the Bills and the Chargers secondaries. One way to spot touchdown regression is by looking at a yards to touchdowns conversion. Clearly, there are more detailed ways of doing this. But if you look at how many yards a player has and divide that by the number of yards a player typically has per touchdown, you can get an expected touchdowns number for a player. For example, the wide receiver who's last in the league in touchdowns versus should have touchdowns is unsurprisingly Jacoby Myers. He has 346 receiving yards this season, and based on that total, he should have 2.11 touchdowns. That number is just calculated by looking at how wide receivers have scored over the last 10 years. Now, Jacoby Myers is not surprising. What might be surprising is who's second from the bottom. It's Davante Adams. Adams has just 2 touchdowns this year when his yardage total says that he should have more than 4. Just something to keep in mind. I've seen a lot of people say that they're concerned about Darren Waller, and I think that depends entirely on expectation. Waller currently has a 24% target share in Vegas' offense. That's the highest of any tight end in football. He scored double-digit PPR points in all but one game this year. He's been a top 15 tight end every single week. He's the tight end 4 in overall scoring, but he's also only found the end zone twice. Technically, if you want to look at a yards to touchdowns conversion, he should have closer to 3. If you want to look at an expected touchdown model like the one that Pro Football Focus has, it says the exact same thing, that he should have closer to 3 touchdowns. So I don't think being concerned is the right way to think about this. I think he's just playing a little bit below expectation, and he should be fine from here on out. The last trend this week has to do with Zach Ertz and the Arizona Cardinals. I do think Ertz going there matters a little bit, because he's not just going to walk into a situation where there was this huge tight end target share that's now being vacated. In fact, Arizona is dead last in the league this year in tight end target share. It's hard to imagine that with an upgrade at that position, that just remains the same. And if it gets higher, that means other positions suffer in target share. That's how this works. There's only 100% target share to go around. So it's definitely something to monitor moving forward. That's going to do it for today's show, though. Thanks to all of you for listening. If you get subscribed to the Late Round Podcast, make sure you are by searching for it pretty much anywhere podcasts can be found. And don't forget to follow me on Twitter @LateRoundQB. Thanks, everyone. I'll talk to you tomorrow with the Weekly Sleeper Show.